Alright, I know you're excited to get a game out there. I know you are. So I'm going to go through a couple of the simplest steps to put your Unity project out to a playable version of a game. So the first one I'm going to do is just show you the easiest, the one that's universal. I know it's going to work. There's not going to be any weird problems or issues. It's this PC, Mac, and Linux standalone. So we're going to get it out to a standalone, and I'll show you how the build process works. What I've also done is I'm going to click on player settings here. Now I've created an icon here, and this icon I've generated is just a silly little icon. It's just a screen grab from the game, really. So if I wanted to make this a playable game and put it out on someone's desktop, I'd want to have a little image, right, that shows them what they're going to be playing. So in order to stick that in the player settings, I'm just going to click on my player settings here, and I say this override for standalone, right? Here's my different texture slots. I'm just going to drag this one into the top one, and it should just downsize them as needed, so that it'll just downsize them automatically. I could choose a different one for every different type of resolution, but I don't really need to. I just want to make sure that I got an image in there. And let's throw in the splash image as well. And let's not show the Unity splash screen. Why not? Because we want people to think that it was a game that we made and not a game that was made by Unity. Alright, so I'm going to standalone. Now here, if I have a Mac, I'm going to choose Mac OS X. If I have a PC, I'm going to choose Windows. And if I'm making it for Linux, I'll choose Linux. Now I've got a Mac here, so I'm going to use Mac OS X. And the architecture here, this is a question a lot of people ask. Do I need x86 64-bit, x86, or universal? What I'm going to say is x86 works on everything so far. x86 64-bit, if you have a non-64-bit computer. And don't forget, there's a lot of people out there that don't have 64-bit computers. Some of those computers are 4 or 5 years old. Unless I know the target audience I have has a 64-bit processor, I'm going to stick with x86. That'll work on anything. That'll work on any Mac. Alright, so in Universal, I've had very poor luck getting it to work. So I'm going to click on Build. And what is it going to say? It's going to ask me where I want to build this, right? Now, if you're doing this on a PC, it tends to create a whole folder with an exe file. So you want to create a place for your builds. And I created this folder builds, which is going to be part of this project folder that I'm giving you, all the files. And in this folder builds, we can just say, I'm going to call this iGuy. And it's going to build all the stuff, compile things, compress it, and boom. Now we've got a folder here, or excuse me, a game with that as an icon, right? And I'm going to double click on iGuy. And I'm going to choose windowed. It tends to, if you don't use windowed and allows full screen, it's really hard to get out of the full screen with the Unity player. So let's make it a little bit smaller. And we can actually choose the graphics quality, which is kind of the nice thing about the Unity player. And there we go. Let's just close that out here. And now I can play this game as a standalone game. So there you go. From your game design to the final completed output. It's working on our, there we go, it's working on our Mac or PC if you happen to have a PC. Alright, so now I'll just kill that game. Yes, I do want to quit. Alright, there you go. That is how to export in the simplest way possible. Now let's just show you, if you're going to do web, it's just about as easy with web, but let's just swap it out here. Let's go to web player. Let's not worry about this stuff. Streamed means I'm able to stream content in. If I have a pretty dense game, which most people don't for the web player, then I'm going to have to stream content in. But let's go ahead and hit build. Now I'm going to say, we're going to put it in builds, right? Where we just were. And I'm going to call this iGuy as well. And what it's going to do here, it's going to create a Unity. There we go. Here it's going to build. And sometimes it takes it a second. So when it builds everything together, it's going to create a directory with an index file that loads up the Unity 3D web player asset. The thing about web player, like I said, it's a little bit dodgy, doesn't always work and everything. If you have the plugin, it should work, but people have old browsers and stuff. Here it is. Okay, so it generates a folder and it creates an HTML file. I'm going to open up that HTML. Yeah, here you go. Here's the problem. You're using a version of Chrome that doesn't currently support the Unity web player plugin. This is a problem that we're in the middle of a transition now. The web player is not being supported by anyone anymore, but WebGL is not quite supported by anyone anymore. So one thing I can say is that right now, your chances of getting the web player universally supported are very, very low. So I try to avoid that one. Let's go with the WebGL. Let's see what happens here. And let's choose my optimization level low, and let's go ahead and click on WebGL. There's some chances that it won't work, but WebGL is the new frontier. And let's call this iGuy WebGL, because what it does is creates a whole directory. And this takes a little bit of time. It's got to compress all this stuff. Oh, happened pretty fast. That's cool. Oh, there it goes. All right, so we're going to wait for it to compress everything. Luckily, this game's pretty small and light, somewhat portable. And one of the problems with WebGL is it oftentimes won't run a game from a local directory. You have to upload it somewhere in order for it to run. That's a WebGL limitation. So we may come across that. But it's pretty much the same process for the build for every single type of build. It's just a little bit different. WebGL, they always go out to some type of web format. PC, Mac, and Linux standalone generates an exe or DMG file for you to play directly from your desktop, which is really pretty nice. And then the last one we haven't gone over is iOS. And iOS is probably one of the trickiest ones because it doesn't really generate a game for you. What it generates is a project. Just like a Unity project, it generates what's called an Xcode project. And in that Xcode project, you then have to do whatever you're going to do in Xcode. I'm going to show you that process because it's very tough if you haven't used Xcode to understand what the heck is going on when it generates a folder directory structure for you, and then you have to open it up in Xcode. And then from Xcode, you then have to play the game on the simulator. So I am going to go through that. Tell you what, it seems like it's taken quite a while to compile this. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the stop button. And when we come back, we'll go to both the iOS and the WebGL aspects of this so I can show you how those two work.